Well, tomorrow is the big one. It's Melbourne Cup Day, and it's often billed as the race that stops the nation. But for many Aussies, it raises complicated and uncomfortable questions. Helle Erhardsen is the General Manager of the Coalition for the Protection of Racehorses, and she argues the industry is facing an animal welfare reckoning. Helle, thanks for joining us on McKnight Tonight.
Thank you so much for having us on.
Look, let's start with the big question. Are you opposed to all horse racing, or is there a qualification, or is it without qualification?
It will take a little while to explain, but yes, we are opposed to all horse racing. We don't believe there's an ethical way that this can be done if you are to truly put welfare over profit.
Okay, I don't have a horse in this race. No pun intended. I don't overly follow the Melbourne Cup, but I'm not against the Melbourne Cup. But you recently released data showing at least 174 racehorses died in racing and training over the past 12 months in Australia. What do you say to those in the industry who argue these are unfortunate but rare accidents?
I would say these are absolutely not accidents. They are a direct result of pushing the horses too far, pushing them too fast, and pushing them way too young. It's proven from lots of different research that the majority of these catastrophic injuries happen because of the stress to the bones over time for these horses. They're started way too young before their bodies has matured. And the way they're being started is in a rush, and the way they're being exercised is way beyond what they should be doing at that age that they're doing it. I think it is well and truly scientifically proven that these are not accidents. We're seeing horses also on the track that simply collapse and die from a heart attack. And we're seeing incidents of internal bleeding that's proven to be exercise induced. And then, of course, the many catastrophic injuries, such as front limb fractures, we're seeing where the bone simply breaks in half, and the horse's leg will just flap along, and the poor horse is still trying to keep up with the herd.
Mm.
And yeah, these horses are being put down. Racing will put up a nice green screen so the race
Yes,
goes
I mean
don't.
it's always been an ongoing joke. The screen's out, and the
Yeah,
bad stuff happens. But
yeah.
here's something that I think, can we agree that most of the people who are in this game love their horses because they argue that racing can be conducted humanely and safely. For example, with tighter regulation, better welfare protocols, improved training, retirement plans. Would you agree with that? Would that satisfy you if it was regulated more?
Well, first of all, that would take a lot of regulation, and we are participating as much as we can with submissions every time we get the chance to improve welfare, because indeed there is a lot that could be done to make this safer and make it less stressful and less cruel to the horses. Unfortunately, we're not. This is going very slowly, and the improvements that has been done is simply not enough. We're not really seeing that the industry is willing to do this. It costs money. Good welfare costs money. And our argument is, if it's that an industry shouldn't be allowed to operate if it can't afford to look after its most important participants, which would be the horses.
Mm. Hey, where does the RSPCA stand on horse racing? What's its stance?
I think, yeah. Well, I can't speak on
Of
behalf of the
course.
RSPCA, but you can look at their information pages where they stand on horse racing, and it's very clear that it needs serious reform in order to be done just remotely less cruel. We have what was it earlier this year? We had a very important court case won in Tasmania. RSPCA Tasmania won a case of cruelty where it was proven that whipping racehorses with even the padded whip that racing claims doesn't hurt horses, that it does actually cause unnecessary and unjustifiable pain and suffering to the horse. So in some ways, you can say that every single day of the year, racing is actually committing acts of cruelty. If it wasn't for the fact that racing has been allowed to regulate itself, both the integrity and animal welfare, which we think is a serious case of conflict of interest, which really shouldn't be happening. If we
But
had
you're
independent
facing an
oversight.
uphill battle, aren't you? I mean, I think back to Mike Baird in New South Wales, the Premier of New South Wales at the time. He tried to shut down greyhound racing, did it for a short period of time, but it cost him politically. Um, you know, he will say that it wasn't because of the greyhound situation, but that essentially ended his political career. It's not realistic to believe politicians are going to stick their necks out for this cause, is it?
I think eventually they will realize that it is not in the interest of Australians to keep funding an industry that is being proven time and time and time and again that it's cruel to the animals. And that's not just horse racing, that's greyhound racing as well. And we are seeing moves on it. And yeah, indeed, we have several MPs who are supporting our Not to the Cup campaign and is working really hard at parliaments across the country to speak up for the horses.
Yeah, I didn't mean all politicians. You'd obviously get Greens and possibly some Teals, but the two big parties, it's always tough. You know, I started to think that people were saying up to the cup and, just getting a bit over it for whatever reason. I'm a TV guy though, and TV ratings would suggest people really still do like the sport. The 2024 Melbourne Cup race, well, it attracted a national average audience of approximately 1.91 million viewers. That was an 11.3 increase compared to the previous year. So what are we going for here? Uh are we trying to get average Australians on board? How do you do that if they're still enjoying this sport?
Well, look, I think you will find that most people who are watching this is because they're gambling on the races. So it is so closely tied to gambling, and that is a whole issue in itself. The problems that gambling is putting on the Australian public. And I dare to say, look, the money that gambling on horse racing might generate for governments. You'd have to look at how much money they're putting back into the horse racing industry and then see
Sure.
if there's even a surplus at the end. We're not allowed to see those numbers, so I can't say what they would show, but it would be very interesting. And I think that is both the gambling, but also the tradition. It's a tradition that people are watching the Melbourne Cup. Um, Now we've been out
Well, it's
protesting
a
for.
public holiday in Victoria.
Yeah. If
How do
I
you
just
fight that?
Yeah, I was just about to say we've been protesting here for the last couple of days in Melbourne, and even from the race goers that are going into the races will tell us, "Oh, look, we're against horse racing. We don't go in there for the horses. We go in there because we want to look pretty and we want to party." And that is why we have started a campaign that's called Not to the Cup, that is
Yeah.
running across the entire country, where we are offering an alternative to people, a meaningful way to spend the Cup Day without hurting any animals. So proving that we can still have a wonderful good time. We can dress up, put our silly hats on, and get drunk if that's what you want. Um, but it doesn't have to involve the cruelty of horse racing. And we are getting bigger and bigger support every single year for this campaign, and people are loving it. And the community are getting together to maybe raise funds for their local animal charities and all sorts of different great causes. So we're definitely seeing that it is possible to celebrate this day and make it into a day where we even celebrate animals instead of exploiting them.
Yeah, look, I think there's definitely been a an uptick in people turning their backs on the Melbourne Cup and the Nut to the Cup campaign. But obviously, I don't think the Melbourne Cup is going anywhere soon. But Helle Erhardsen, thank you so much for joining us on McKnight Tonight. It's a big campaign you've got going. Thanks for telling us about
It
it.
is, and we'll stick to it. Thank you.
Fun, insightful interviews from a washed-up producer with nothing to lose. McKnight Tonight, McKnight Tonight, McKnight Tonight. It's good night from McKnight Tonight.